Another exciting episode of Automate Yourself with Google Apps Scripts. Just creating some hype here. Who else? Someone just joined. Oh no, it's me twice. Okay. All right. So this week, let's jump on in. We're gonna do a kind of a workshop. So we're gonna do a work through an exercise. And then I'm not sure if it's going to take up all the time. We'll find out. And then maybe at the end, I think, Michael, you had a problem that you'd be curious to get feedback on. We'll stop the recording on that one because it's got some sensitive data. All right, let me just dive in. So this week, we're going to do like a weekly report processor, for lack of a better name for this. And basically, the goals of this lesson is that we get a bit familiar with the Gmail app service. This is an API we haven't used so far. And that we also get used to a time-based trigger, which is going to run our script for us on a regular basis. And then most of the work will be in a single script where we read incoming emails and merge that data into a central spreadsheet. So this is basically what we're building. So you've got your emails coming in, and they've been labeled. So we're using a Gmail label. I'll just shut the window here so I don't get noise. So we read those incoming emails. So let's say you've got someone, and every week they send you a report. And if they can be consistent, say, using the title of the report, then you can use a filter combined with a label and then put all those emails in one place. We're then going to read through those emails. Martina, how are you doing? All right, I'm going to rewind and repeat that. So this was, today's lesson was inspired by Martina, who has this problem. And I think it's a fairly common problem in some form or another. So we've got incoming emails. They've all been labeled using a filter. And I'll show you that briefly in Gmail quickly. What we're going to do is read each of those emails, and each of them contains a link to an individual spreadsheet. We're going to take that data, merge it into a central spreadsheet, and then we'll archive the weekly report into a folder. And finally, we'll mark the message as read so that we know that that message has been processed. That's a simple way to do this. Maybe you could do another approach would be to add an additional label to the email to say it's been processed, or change the label that's attached to the email. But marking it as read is simple. And what's nice about that is if something goes wrong with a single report, all you got to do is mark it as unread in Gmail, rerun the script, and everything works. All right, so this is what we're going to build today. Now in Gmail, you need to dig into the settings in your Gmail in the browser. And while I was doing this, I just realized how ugly and inconsistent Gmail settings have become. They look like it's one of those bits of Gmail that's just grown over time with not much consistency. But anyway, the first thing you do is you create a label. And so I created a label called GAS, Google Apps Script Weekly Report. So you'll find that button on there. Then you got to jump over to filters. And what you do is you create a filter, and with the filter you fill in some search terms. You can say it's from a certain person or to a certain person. For this one, I've just made it simple. The subject contains GAS Weekly Report. You can do other things with this. And then a big thing to watch out for is the actual button to create filter is hidden here. By default, you'll click search, which isn't what you want. I mean, maybe to test that your search is good, but once you create the filter, then every new incoming email is going to get a label applied to it. When you create the filter, there's another screen that comes up where you can choose the label to apply. Okay, and that's how we get this thing here. This is our list of emails waiting to process. So let me just show you. I've got this here in my Gmail account. Oh, wait a second. I need to just put those on the same window. All right, so here's my Gmail account, and you can see I've created some reports, and each of them it's just like short message, and it's got a link to the Google Drive spreadsheet. Let's mark that as unread again. So actually, when I'm creating these emails, let's say I do this. So I need to make sure that the title is correct. It's just, I'm not going to actually do this one, but give some title. And then what you do is you insert files using Google Drive. And that's where I can pick out one of the spreadsheets that has now mysteriously vanished. There are quite a few here. Anyway, you can then pick something out from Google Drive that you want to insert. So I'm inserting as a drive link and not as an attachment for this example. But we'll look briefly at the end of how you handle attachments. Okay, so these you know, they all look a bit different, but they basically contain a link to the report. All right, so here's our stuff there. Now, next thing, let's just jump onto the next slide. Okay, now we're going to dive into the code. Well, let me actually just show you first before I do that how I've set this up in Google Drive. So, well, you'll find in the week 7 folder, you'll find the code here, there's the slides, and then basically what we've got is a central spreadsheet. The incoming reports, actually I didn't need that anyway, so yeah, we could delete that one. So we've got a central spreadsheet that looks like this, and right now it's empty, it's just got the column headings. And then in the archive, in here, that's where we're going to put the, and it's taking a long time to think here, that's where we're going to put the incoming spreadsheets that have been sent to us. Okay, so so we're aiming to merge data in here and then put a copy of the original report there. Why am I making copies of this? So when you do these type of automations, a good tip is try not to destroy things. Like, and the reason for that is often when you do this type of automation, things go wrong. Like someone changes the name of the email, or instead of attaching a Google Sheet, they attach an Excel spreadsheet, and maybe your code's not ready to handle that. So you want to make sure that all along the way, you're kind of keeping a copy of things, logging stuff. Maybe you send yourself an email alerting yourself when the code ran. Stuff that's going to basically make sure that if things go wrong, which they probably will at some point, that you're able to go back and figure out what caused the problem. Okay? So that's basically why I've got this archive folder. All right, now let's go take a look at the code, which I've now lost. Here we go. Yeah. So this is the code for the script. That's the whole thing. So it's about 60 lines of code to do the job here. So I'm going to go through these bits one by one. So we're going to start with this part. So what we're doing here, this function is going to get called to trigger the process of looking for new reports and then process them. What I'm doing here is using the Gmail app service and doing a search where I'm saying I want to find all the emails which are unread and have the label Gas Weekly Report. Okay, so this stuff I put in the search is actually exactly the same stuff that you type in here. So I can do label unread up here, for example. So basically, it's a search syntax you use in Gmail. It's the same thing that you can use in your code. Now let's just take, while we're here, just take a little look at this thing. So we haven't yet looked at the whole Gmail app reference, but basically what you've got in there, so you've got the main class Gmail app, which is where you start any kind of interaction with Gmail. And then from that, you have messages, threads, messages, labels, drafts, and attachments. So basically, the hierarchy is you start with the Gmail app, and usually from there, if you're reading email, the next thing you get will be a bunch of email threads. Now, a thread, of course, in Gmail, if I was to like each one of these is a thread, although that contains only a single message. If I reply to this and just say thanks, this is now 2 messages. So you can see the number of messages in the thread. So that's why you have threads there, and then from a thread, you can get messages. And messages have labels. If you're creating a new one, you may have a draft. You may make a draft. And messages can also have attachments. So that's basically the order of things with this Gmail app service. And it's worth having a look through the documentation as usual. There's some pretty good stuff about this. Also, if you just Google the Gmail app service. Now, there's a point here. In the past, we used the mail service for sending emails. So this is, as it says here, only for sending email. And you can also send emails using the Gmail app service. It's more complicated usually to do so. So the mail service is there just to make life simpler. All right, so far so good. Just checking in that everyone's awake and alive. Good. All right, so this is where we're starting. We're doing the search, getting all the threads, and then we start processing the threads in the loop. We hand things off to this process message function. So we're giving process message a single thread to handle. So let's take a look at the process message function. Right, this thing, we're passing it a thread, and then again we use the Gmail app service where we say, get me all the messages that belong to that thread. And the first message in the thread is always 0. So what I'm doing is pulling out a message and then getting the body using this getPlainBody function. So let me give you one. Let me give you like a live example of that. Let's go in here. So yeah, what I'll do here is let's just change this slightly to yeah. So we only want to process right now just a single thread, so you can see what's happening, and then we're going to stop here. So I'm going to return there so that you can see the body of one of these messages. So I'm going to run this now. And away we go. Oh. Sorry. I needed to actually log something. Okay, let's run it again. All right, now you can see, so the message I've read is this first one. And you can see here's all, this is like in an HTML format. But here where I called get plain body, what it's doing is stripping out all the HTML and just giving me it in the form of raw text. And what you can see is the link to the report is embedded with this text here. Okay, so it's between this greater than and less than signs, and you've got a link to the actual spreadsheet. Now, from there, what we need to do is do what's called a regular expression. So who here has encountered regular expressions before? I'm guessing, Omar, you have too, yeah. Okay, right, we're going to look at regular expressions a bit in a minute, but it is a huge topic. So I could, in theory, I could do another 4 sessions just on regular expressions. But basically what we're doing here, you can see this function. So we've got the body of the message, and we're saying body, which is a string of text, match this regular expression. And what we're doing right here, in this brackets, is we're saying pull out the ID of the spreadsheet that we're looking for and put it in this match variable. And it actually gets put in array index 1 in the match variable. Now I'm going to have a little bit more of a look at regular expressions in the next slide. So let's not get completely stuck on that now. But what we do then is we're starting off by saying the spreadsheet ID is undefined. That means it doesn't have a value yet. If we manage to match correctly the link in the document, then we set the spreadsheet ID to what we matched. And then we say, okay, if I have a spreadsheet ID, everything's okay. I can go ahead and process the report. Then I'm going to mark it as read, so we know that report's been handled. And then I'm going to log a log message to say that we've processed this report. Otherwise, if we didn't get a spreadsheet ID, there was something wrong in the message. So maybe they forgot to include the attachment, so we can just log that as an error message. And this here, this thread get first message subject is a shortcut to just get the subject of the very first message. That makes life a bit easier for us. Okay, so we've seen the plain body. Yeah, let me just go back to the actual code. So this was this process message function. Right, now let's remove these two for a second. So we got the ID, and then we go on to this process report function. Now, before I do that, actually, let's just have a little look at regular expressions. So what are regular expressions? Well, on the one level, they're a programming language inside a programming language. When I say programming language, they're actually what's called a declarative language. Regular expressions are actually what's called a declarative language. With the declarative language, you don't, like JavaScript, you need to specify exactly what you want. You say, if this, then that. You have all this conditional logic and other things. With a declarative language, you just will do something like say, this is what I want to happen. You go figure out how to do it. Now, some examples of this, if you've ever worked with an SQL databases, you can think of regular expressions as very similar to SQL. So like SQL is to databases, regular expressions are the same concept for working with a chunk of text. So with an SQL statement, you might say, select the users from the users table who created an account in the last week. So you might do like select star from users where account created greater than a specific date. Regular expressions are logically the same kind of thing. You may also, if you're using search engines, have run into like special search syntax, like a wildcard asterisk. And that's also part of regular expressions. Now, yeah, as I said, I can't really take the time to explain regular expressions in detail today. So what I'd recommend is it's something that's super useful, that's worth investing the time on. I put some links to some tutorials, and if you're really struggling, maybe I can do a course on that in particular. But I think the first thing is just simply the most useful thing I can present to you today is logically, what are regular expressions? What's their purpose? And their purpose is basically for searching in a chunk of text, okay, or for querying that text. Does that kind of make any sense whatsoever? Okay, Martina says yes. So I guess one other thing, the good news about regular expressions is that they are used pretty much in the same way in many different programming languages. So if you learn how regular expressions work once, you'll find them used in Java, JavaScript, Python, PHP, whatever language you care to name. They pretty much implement exactly the same syntax for regular expressions. So if you're getting into programming, it's something that it's worth investing in trying to understand this. And certainly if you Google, it's a topic that causes endless questions until you invest the time to actually understand how they work, and then you figure out they're actually quite easy. But there are also lots of tools online where you can create and test your own regular expressions. Okay, enough about regular expressions. All right, so we were here. We've got our spreadsheet ID, and now we're going to go and process a report with that spreadsheet ID. And the next function is basically stuff you've all seen before in different lessons. So in the script, we have the central spreadsheet ID hard-coded. That's what I'm doing here. And we're going to pull out or create an instance of the sheet inside the spreadsheet that we want to push the data into. Then we're pulling out our weekly spreadsheet using the ID that we found in the email. Getting all the values from the weekly spreadsheet, throw away the heading, and then we loop through the incoming data and append each row one by one to the central spreadsheet. So target sheet is this one, and we're appending each row of data. Now, that's a simple solution to this. There are more complicated solutions which may be more efficient. Like there's the range object in Google Sheets has a method called copy to, which allows you to copy data from one sheet to another or from different positions in the same sheet. And if you're finding that using this approach is too slow or causing problems, you may want to look into copy to as an alternative if you're dealing with a lot of data. All right, for the rest of this, I think is fairly straightforward. Again, I make sure to be logging step by step what's happening. So I've been logging here to say that I actually processed the report, because you find out that when you go back and look, maybe you've got your automation running, and it's been running for a few months and everything's good, and then suddenly it stops working, it really helps if you can go back in the logs and see where exactly things stopped working. All right, and then finally, the archive file function. This is also nothing that you haven't really seen before. So we're using the Drive app to get the folder, and we've hard-coded the folder ID. So we have the central archive folder, and then we get the file using the spreadsheet ID. That's our weekly file, and we simply add the file to the archive folder. When you use this add file method, it doesn't move it out of the original location. So if someone created it and it's in a folder in their Google Drive, it will stay there until they delete it. But if they delete it, as long as it exists in another folder, it doesn't get completely deleted. So basically what you're doing there is keeping a permanent link to that file. Okay. All right, so let me show you now. This is the whole script. So we got our central spreadsheet, that's our archive folder. We've been through these functions. So what remains is simply to run them. So there's our central spreadsheet. There is the archive folder. That's correct, yeah. I did ask, so if the original file gets deleted, the one in the archive stays. No, it's not. If you're used to, say, Unix-based file systems, you'd think that it's just a shortcut, but no. What happens is basically Google only removes the file once there are no more links pointing to it in any folder. So yeah, does that answer your question, or is that clear?
Yes, that answers it. But they must have changed this, because a couple of years ago this wasn't the case. So if you delete if you have the same file but it's linked from several folders, if you delete it in just one place, the original one is gone for everybody. From experience.
Okay, maybe you're right. We can test that in a minute. Yeah, we could test. Okay, so we'll test that. First, let me run this thing before I delete all my sample data. But let's see if that really works. Okay. All right, so we've got our central spreadsheet currently empty. There it is. We've got our archive folder, which is also empty, and we've got our inbox. Let's just mark that one as unread again, which is full of emails waiting to be processed. All right, so away we go. Let's run this thing. Okay, and now there you go. Data is starting to fill up in the central spreadsheet. It's done the first file. If I reload this, we will hopefully. Do I still have something printed out? Oh, here. So right now it's only going to do the first file. Okay. Yeah. All right, processes the message. That's good. And then processes the report. And then archives the file. All right, this should be working. Let's clean this up again. Do we have anything? Okay. No. All right. Let me run this thing again, and then we'll go and find out if we have a problem or not. Right. So I'll get rid of that data again, as we're just testing. This is in the central spreadsheet. and run this thing again. Okay, now it's filling up with data. This time it's doing all three, I think, but maybe just two because I don't know, it's saying the whole lot. Good. All right, let's have a look in Gmail first. Okay, at the moment, that's the only one that's unread. So it's marked the other two as read. And then let's see if it's archived the files correctly. No, that's not good. Let's just check if we've got the right ID. Okay, now let's find out what's going on. Find out if we can see anything in the logs. All right, so it's processed that report, 21 rows added each time. And that should be all good. And now I've got a demo effect because it won't put files in the folder that I want it to. So it claims it's put the files in there. Let's just see. Where these things are. Okay, so there is the okay. This is a demo effect because I'm using the same ID of file each time, and I move them into trash, which actually kind of proves your theory, Adela. Let's just get these files out of the trash. All right.
Yeah, that's not a very intuitive feature of the Google Drive.
I mean, the other way we could do it then would be to make a copy rather than just adding the file to a folder. So we got the files in there, and then hopefully, yeah, okay. The only issue there could be if someone actually does reply. So with this code, what it may not handle well is if someone replied to something and that message is still read. So that could be something that needs looking at as you start to use this solution. But basically, what I can do now is let me create a fake report. Right, I'll make a copy of this. What? Okay, I'll just copy it from here. So let's call this week. What do we have? Week. Okay, call it week 22. Yes. somewhere, anywhere in my drive. Okay. Right, and I'll just, I don't know, put in a random date in here. So that we have some different dates. All right, now what I'm going to do is make a sample email just to see if this thing works. So, oops. So I'll mail it to myself. And we will add a link to Google Drive. Just take a look at the most recent one. Okay, we have a small problem at the moment as my son and his friend are playing games next door, which seems to be slowing down my internet. Sorry, back again. Yeah, it's the same. My son and his friend are playing games next door, so the joys of working at home, they're consuming half the internet in this house, which makes things very flaky. I'm just going to switch to a hotspot, so I'll reconnect again in 2 seconds. Hold on. Okay, can you still hear me? Okay, great. All right, the joys of let's call this the joys of COVID. All right, so let's go back to this window. Right, let's see if this is going to now let me insert the file properly. To recent. Okay, so there's our week 22 report. Inserts as a drive link there. Okay, so we send that now. Now we've only got one report in here. We've got, where's my archive folder? There's there, the archive reports. So let's run the script again. I mean, I think, but I'm guessing it's now ending more data. Good. Let's just reload that page. Ah, yeah, there's the report for week 22 in there, and this thing is finished. So what you can see there is basically every time we run this, what it does is it picks up any new reports, processes them, and then marks them as read. So the final thing we just need to do to make this thing work on a regular basis is go into our triggers again. That's this little stopwatch icon up here. Go in there, add a trigger, and we do a time-driven trigger to run our get new reports function. And then basically we can say how often do we want it to run. Let's run it, maybe it says weekly, we just need to run it once a week, every Monday at, I don't know, like let's say you get the reports at 9 a.m. just to be sure. We set it up to run at 11 a.m. and we're done. And now we have this trigger, and this is going to run once a week. Go and read your email looking for a report, merge the data into the central spreadsheet, and archive the incoming report. Now, this is still fairly short. There's probably more that you want to do. Like, you may want to send yourself an email every time the thing runs successfully, or with a summary of what it did, so that you get a reminder after it's processed report. Yep, I ran, I did this, everything went okay. Another approach to that, by the way, is if you do just send an email every time it succeeds, it will train you not to read those emails. So you may want to have the approach that you only send an email if something goes wrong. And then you know that when you get an email from your script that there's a problem and you need to do something. And there are other things here, you know, like if people name the report wrongly, if they don't insert the attachment correctly, these are things that could go wrong. Another thing is if the structure of the spreadsheet changes, that's something that you'd need to factor into your code. So to start mapping columns or update your central spreadsheet to match the new structure. One last quick thing on the script, and then I'll see if you guys have any questions. So I just showed you an approach where someone has inserted a Google Drive link. The other way you can do it is that you can attach something. You could attach a file from Google Drive, or maybe they're sending an Excel spreadsheet. And the way you would handle that is there's the Gmail attachment class. So this is an example. If you've got a message, like here, message 0, you say get attachments, you get a list of attachments, and this is saying the first attachment, copy the blob. Now, what a blob means, the actual content, binary content of the file, puts it in this variable. And then what you can do, this is actually a newish feature of Google, that you can basically insert a new file into your Google Drive. And if it's an Excel spreadsheet, you convert it automatically to being a Google Sheet. And then from there, you'd need to integrate this into the rest of your code, like putting the file into the archive, etc. So these bits, how you fit that into this code is left as an exercise for the reader. Cool. Any questions on this so far? Does it make sense, or are you now super excited and you're like, oh, I see how to do this now? Exactly. Time to try it. So that would be homework. I would just say, find some email like this to automate. There's a lot you can do with the Gmail app. You can, for example, if you get spam, you could write a custom spam filter, or if you've got, there's other tricks you can do. Like, there is actually a script out there that allows you to send emails in the future. So what you do is you create an email, and then the script will hold on to the email until the time that you specify. So that can be useful, like if you're up at 3 in the morning sending an email to a customer, but you don't want to send it at 3 a.m. So instead, you use this to send it at 9 a.m. Or you could apply custom labels or delete old emails in bulk using a script. There's lots of things you can do with that Gmail API. Cool. If no further questions, then what I'll do is yeah, no problem, Martina. So I'll share all the files and slides, and then you can adapt this to your needs. And now I'm going to stop the recording now, and Michael can show us what's going on with him. Ist gut? No problem. I mean, also, yeah. How do I stop the recording? I'm there.